And
Alright,
here we
here
go.
we go.
Welcome to game one of the Winner Stays On series, MarineLorD versus Black Widow. We've got MarineLorD spawning in the south of the map in the color blue, playing as the Chinese civilization. Of course, he's on that win streak of one, $500 already banked, trying to extend that win streak. He puts the Imperial official straight away next to the berry bushes, which are going to be giving a nice buff to that. We a little bit early to find out exactly how he's going to tackle this, but we're going to find out soon. Should we go and take a look and see what his opponent's doing in the north of the map?
Oh,
So, in the north of the map, we have Black Widow. His challenger recently signed to Genesis Gaming, and he's about 15th in the ladder right now and looking to dethrone MarineLorD, playing as the Abbasid dynasty in red. Any early thoughts from you, Lidakor?
so the start here for Black Widow is very, very standard with the Abbasids, House of Wisdom, and Sheep. The more interesting thing to talk about is MarineLorD's build here, which is sort of the meta now for the Chinese. So the idea here is that you'll be collecting your sheep, and if you just drop it off at the town center, you will get 10 food for the 10 food you carry. But if you are dropping it off at a mill that's being supervised, you get 12 per drop off. So you're getting a 20% boost to the food you drop off, and you also boost the amount of tax gold you receive, and you can pick that tax gold up once you get to 20, bring it back to the town center, and you will have the gold you need for feudal age. So this way, you basically have to mine no gold. Oftentimes this build is combined with the second Dark Age Scout, so you can maximize the amount of sheep you bring in, so you can just extend your stay close to that mill as long as possible.
Yeah, and with that, we already see Black Widow scouting inside MarineLorD's base. So there's not going to be any surprises here, but it looks like he's managed to pick up a couple of his opponent's sheep in the meantime. So that's definitely going to be helpful. We can take a little look around the map and see how the spawn is. First glances, it looks pretty even. Maybe MarineLorD will prefer his wood spawn quite safely behind the base, but they both look pretty fine. Both got a couple of golds nearby. Both got a deer. Really, really close, although that's obviously less relevant for Black Widow with the Abbasids. But yeah, it looks to be a pretty fair spawn, you'd have to say. Both in very well protected positions, but on this map you almost always are. Although, the one thing I think is MarineLorD is obviously there. He's taking gold right at the front of his base, so that's possibly a little bit more raidable than his opponent, but I think they'll both be relatively happy with how that looks.
Yeah, and this is the patch of the sheep coming in here for MarineLorD. It is crucial for this build to bring in as many sheep as you can, because, as I said, this build lives and dies with the amount of sheep you have around that mill, because that's what you want for the Imperial Officer to boost. Of course, the berries also work, but that's a slower source of food than the sheep is. So this is probably the best thing that you can do here. And you see, MarineLorD, with only 2 villagers on gold as opposed to his opponent, he is going to have the resources for feudal age soon. Of course, Black Widow clicks up a little faster, but the economy wing is a steady 2 minutes building time, whereas for MarineLorD, he's just going to send more villagers to catch up.
Yeah, and of course, absolutely no surprise to see the economic wing here. I mean, on this map, well, it's the meta right now in general for Abbasid, but on this map especially, there's not really any other option. Both are clearly going to go for very, very economy-heavy builds. Very, very difficult to raid or put early military pressure on here. We'll have to wait and see if one of them decides to put a little bit of pressure and tries to get in a couple of raids, but obviously incredibly difficult to do. So both of them really looking right now to push their early ecos and see what they can do. MarineLorD, in the meantime, that scout took some damage, but just about gets away with it. So a couple more shots from the town centre there, and that scout might have dropped, but he is going to be okay. How did Black Widow do with the sheep gathering? Did he manage to get a decent batch as well? Not really. Not really. Nowhere near as much as MarineLorD. So MarineLorD definitely won the... oh, sorry. Well, a little bit less relevant anyway, but some good sheep gathering there from MarineLorD. As you said, it's definitely going to help him out.
MarineLorD is going to play with one town center. Apparently, he's not sending villagers to stone, as he's going for a stable. Now, that's a little unconventional, not something that we see every day. He's pretty heavy on the gold department, but at this point, the only player that's going to play 2 town centers will be Black Widow, already mining stone pretty heavily.
Yeah, it's surprising to see. I was expecting to see a bit of a massive Chuko news here with how incredibly strong they are right now in this meta, just costing 20 food, but it doesn't look like that's what he's decided to do. I mean, maybe he's just trying to do something a bit unconventional, although he is now going professional scouts, MarineLorD, so that stable going to be used to, I imagine, to train some more scouts, which we see.
This is a build that we have been seeing with other civilizations like the Holy Roman Empire being done. So the idea is that you make a stable to make your scouts. This way, you don't sacrifice your villager production to make scouts. And with professional scouts, you can bring them in and sort of get your getter boost. With the Holy Roman Empire, you would use the Aachen Chapel to boost your food income from the hunt. Here you're using the supervising ability of the Imperial Officer. Same concept as with the sheep, you drop it off close to the mill, so you're benefiting from that extra 20% food dropped off.
And look at all of those deer coming in. I mean, I would say from MarineLorD, this is a very APM heavy build. It's not, I think it's not an easy build to do, but he's, already just look at all of those sheep. He's got 4 scouts on the map going to get deer, already dropped them off and going to get more. So a good boost. I can see in the north of the map that Blackwidow is already totally walled off all of those choke points. So he's in the process at least of doing so. So he got on that very, very quickly, which is definitely the right thing to do. Costs very, very little wood, of course, to block off the choke points on this map. So, I mean, we're in a bit of a treaty game situation here with both players just really booming hard. Even the only military building up so far is that stable, but it's not being used for military production. And I guess both players know this is all about the boom. Now, from China, are you expecting to see Song Dynasty soon? Are you expecting to see that second building go up and Song Dynasty? What are you thinking?
It's a interesting question, because I feel like the Song Dynasty's effect can be maximized the best if you're going for a second town center, and that's something that we're going to see here. So there was an option for MarineLorD to just go fast castle with the clock tower, start making palace guards, start making springolds, and be the aggressor in this game. But it looks like he will drop a second town center soon and delay his castle age quite a bit here, because if you go for professional scouts, Song Dynasty, and 2 TCs, that's going to be a pretty big investment, and it needs some time to return its value. So that way you're going to be delaying your castle age time, and that's the idea for Blackwidow. To catch up with the Chinese 2TC boom in the Song Dynasty, you will go 3 town centers yourself.
I mean, you see that MarineLorD feels so unthreatened by the idea that they could be, as that second town center goes up, he knows there's not going to be any aggression. He's not even bothered walling those choke points, even though it costs such a little amount of wood to do that. I think both players basically know there is a 0 chance of any early aggression here, and it's about who can rapidly build up that eco as quick as possible. And we're on the 8-minute mark. No military units on the field, and not really any sense that we're about to see military units on the field either. So there we see the Barbican of the Sun going up as well. So yeah, that's definitely not unexpected.
That is up to 7 scouts for MarineLorD. He's going very, very heavy on that department. I'm not sure if I like that, to be honest, because, like, there is no one else that's taking that hunt away from you. So you could easily bring it in batches of 3 or 4. And this is a pretty big investment. And once all the hunt is taken, those scouts will pretty much be obsolete. Obviously, this allowed him to swoop up the entire hunt of Blackwidow, but feels a little too excessive of an investment. So let's do maths here. 3 town centers means that every 20 seconds we will have 3 villagers out for Blackwidow. For MarineLorD, every 14 seconds, once you get the Barbican of the Sun up, or every 13 seconds, he will have 2. This means that it's 6 villagers in 40 seconds, as opposed to 6 villagers as well.
Yeah, so it should be identical. 3 town centers versus 2 with Song Dynasty is meant to be identical, right?
Yep, it's pretty much identical, but remember that the villager cost is much lower for the Abbasids here, so it's much easier to afford the same amount of food requirement, or the same amount of villagers being produced when your food requirement is half for Blackwidow. One of the things I would criticize for him, though, is that he didn't place a mill close to the berries, so these berries are only worth 250 food for him. If you are playing the Abbasids or the Delhi, you always have to place a mill nearby, because that doubles the amount of available food on those berries.
And that might really affect him in the kind of late early game as those run out, and he's going to have to start transitioning. Because if we look, you look on Hill and Dale, there are very little resources around. We're seeing, settle in for a long game, because we're seeing stone walls already going up from MarineLorD. But yeah, definitely surprised that he's. I guess that's a slight lapse of judgment there from Blackwidow, because those berries are just going to deplete very, very fast now. As we see some of the villages go down, each of those worth 40 population for MarineLorD, and this is really smart, I think, from him. He didn't panic and start walling early. He took a bit of time, knew there was no early aggression coming in, and now these stone walls are really big, and they're both just in their little zone of booming. I mean, he does have a lot of scouts on the field. I suppose in the current meta, I was just about to say they could be used for sieging in the current meta, because we're seeing a lot of scouts both sieging structures and being used to siege. But yeah, but those villagers now trying to repair that wall. Yeah, they're trying to repair it at the same time. This is an interesting raid going, and this is going to be very, very annoying for Blackwidow if MarineLorD manages to get those scouts into his base.
Absolutely. These guys aren't super dangerous. It's more about the fact that this way MarineLorD could see what Blackwidow is doing, because Blackwidow has vaulted himself up before the third town center, so MarineLorD is a little bit blind on the position of his opponent right now. Getting into that base will allow him to see that, hey, my opponent is booming 3 town centers, so he could react appropriately. Castle Age almost in, and we're seeing a military wing instead of a culture wing, so I would expect to see some camos on the battlefield, with the camo support upgrade being used quite early on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Quite interesting what's happened here, because I mean he is going to be able to get a couple of military units out from these barracks before that wall goes down. But he's managed to force Blackwidow to use those 2 villagers for about, it must have been about 25 seconds, which is a significant waste of villager time keeping that wall up. So even if that's all MarineLorD achieved there, I mean it cost MarineLorD absolutely nothing to have his scouts there doing that. So definitely quite a nice decision.
It is. We can see the power of that Chinese tax collector boosting that mill, because the amount of tax income you get on that mill is proportional to the amount of resources dropped off. And if you supervise your building, you drop off more resources, so you will get more tax income. So once MarineLorD gets tax collector out, he can pick up 600 gold already. That's an enormous amount of gold out there that's floating passively. Both players in Castle Age, and it looks like Blackwidow isn't done booming. That's now Town Center number 4 coming out.
Oh, wow. That's unbelievable. I mean, there is greedy and there's greedy with a 4 town center boom now. I mean, the only thing I'd say about that area, that is very, very exposed if MarineLorD discovers what's going on there. Of course, like out of that protected little zone on Hill and Dale, and a little bit dangerous if he sees that and manages to get some siege. That town center and the berry collection could very, very quickly go down over there. So both kind of trying to show each other who can boom hardest here. Can we take a little look at the resources per minute? I'd love to see who's currently collecting more.
Should be rather similar, and it sort of is. Blackwidow has the root advantage in stone as well. MarineLorD probably has a slight edge, but part of that is that he's currently picking up all the tax. And once he depletes all the tax from those buildings that has piled up over the last 15 minutes, then this gold income is going to drop a tiny bit. So I would say it's relatively even. We're talking about 75 villagers for MarineLorD and 83 for Blackwidow.
Yeah, although we do see MarineLorD with that significant food gathering advantage right now, but a lot of those scouts have gone down now. So as you said, I mean, those scouts were a big investment from MarineLorD. I'm not even sure how many scouts are even remaining at this point. We've seen a few drop, just the 4. So I think he's lost 3 scouts already. So, I mean, they did their job. They did their job and they wasted some villager time. So he might not be too displeased with that. Not much use for them at this point anyway.
Looks like MarineLorD will play a very, very slow game over here. So you see, he's massing Palace Guards. He could try moving out if he wanted to, but at this point, he's just gonna go for the relics, and that's basically it. He still has a couple of scouts inside Blackwidow's base, but that's just an annoyance rather than a threat. The more interesting question is going to be how the Palace Guards and Springolds will fare against the Men-at-Arms Springolds, because the Palace Guards do have the mobility advantage over Men-at-Arms, but they have 1 less armor. So instead of 4-4, they only have 3-3. So, one-on-one, the Men-at-Arms will beat the Palace Guards.
Well, not only the Men-at-Arms will beat the Palace Guards, but really, very soon, these Chinese Springolds should beat the... Well, and on the other hand, the Chinese Springolds should beat the Abbasid Springolds, right? I mean, they should be significantly stronger and with better range quite soon.
Indeed, that extra 100 HP is massive, but the real power spike of the Chinese begins when they get the Bombards in Imperial Age. That extra range combined with the clock tower's extra health gives them such a power. Looks like all those scouts now go down to the Springolds, avenging their fallen villager on the right side. There was a villager killed by the scouts before. And now, MarineLorD knows that he's up against quite a lot of Springolds over here. Currently, no one is close to Imperial Age just yet, but Blackwidow has resources for a keep soon.
Oh, that could be huge. A keep in the middle of this map with all of these resources. You see all the gold there. I mean, really, that gold does not last very long if you stick to your hill. Well, I never thought about it this way, but really all of the gold is in the dale, because this is, after all, a hill and a dale. So, I mean, very, very quickly, those hill resources will deplete, and they need to get there. So I would love to see a keep going down right now in the middle of that dale. I imagine that's what Blackwidow is going to be doing. I can't think of any other reason why he's gathering that stone, apart from to put a keep in the middle of that dale. I imagine we're about to see that actually happen very, very soon. What are you thinking?
It's a possibility. And I guess the idea could be that he starts placing keeps around the sacred sites. Start capturing a sacred site, fortify that position, force MarineLorD to make a move. The problem
and that was great timing there, wasn't it? We just saw that was great timing. He just managed to deny that relic from MarineLorD. So that was very, very nice timing that he got those Springolds right there. And he's probably now going to go and pick it up himself. So that was really, really good. Now we're seeing some rams about to be built as well. So it looks like Blackwidow is actually going to be the one to make a push here. He's not going to sit around. MarineLorD, I mean, they've both been booming, but it looks like Blackwidow is going to be the one to go for an early challenge here.
He has a pretty sizable army right now, and he has an easier time massing those Springolds. On the other hand, of course, the flexibility of the Chinese can be used here really well. For MarineLorD, he can supervise the clock tower to accelerate production. He could potentially surprise the barracks as well. And I feel like Blackwidow...
Oh my god, they're passing each other. They're passing each other. So MarineLorD's not got any idea this is happening, and he's now marching off towards Blackwidow's base. In the meantime, Blackwidow is camped outside of MarineLorD's base. Oh, and he's managed to catch him here. And I think we're going to see... Yeah, we've just seen a few of those units drop, and he's being chased right now. They're actually somehow meeting in the open field, which I'm not sure is what either of them intended to happen. Looks like we're about to see some action, and a few more of those men-at-arms going down. So this is very, very interesting. And now MarineLorD's the one. He looks like he's just about to start marching towards Blackwidow's base. In the meantime, Blackwidow's camped there, and neither of them, I think, really know what they're doing. And now Blackwidow is mining stone right outside MarineLorD's base. And here we go. They're into the water. Loads and loads of Springolds going down right now. MarineLorD with very, very effective micro. It looks like he's really, really got the better of that. And all of a sudden, Blackwidow left with very, very few Springolds. And just like that, it's about 10-0 in Springolds. And that is an absolute disaster for Blackwidow, it looks like, at least from this perspective. All of a sudden, look at that. That is an absolute wipeout. Barely even know what happened there, but those Springolds just went down for absolutely nothing. And just like that, I don't know how Blackwidow can possibly recover from this.
It feels very, very difficult. The thing is that he wanted to open up the right side over here. I feel like he wanted to go Rams, use those men-at-arms, and then actually drop a keep inside the base of MarineLorD, which would have been interesting. But, as I said, it's Chinese flexibility. The moment you see you're outnumbered, you start supervising the barracks, the clock tower, and you can get a huge amount of palace guards on the battlefield. And, of course, MarineLorD is also boosted by 4 relics now, so currently he has the resources to flood those units out. 89 army versus Blackwidow's 27.
Oh wow! I can't help but say I'm a little bit disappointed that I mean, that would have been so interesting, what you just described, to see that take place, to see that keep go up outside MarineLorD's base and that push. And now the keep has gone up, and that would have been a very, very interesting push. Now I just feel that it's just too big, this deficit. I don't know how he's going to deal. How many Springolds is that? 10, 11 Springolds right there? It's a huge number. 13 Springolds. So, this just I mean, from my perspective, this looks like GG. I really like, in a sense, what Blackwidow tried to do. And he's moving in with those rams now, but that is a lot of pressure on his base.
Yep. At this point, the best thing that Blackwidow can hope for is that MarineLorD will have a tough time reinforcing the battlefield. But as long as these Springolds are alive, they will just pick apart the men-at-arms. So it really doesn't matter that the men-at-arms have more armor here than the palace guards do.
Yeah, so, I mean, now he's putting up another keep right in the center, but, this is what they call in the business it looks like to be a bit of a doubt keep. A lot of villagers being lost. This keep, is it even going to get up? I don't think it's going to get up. It's not going to get up. It's really, really close, but that's not going to go up, and I think that not going up might be what signals the end of the game. It was really, really close, and that would have made life incredibly awkward if that keep had gone up, especially right on top of his opponent's resources. I think it was a valiant effort there from Blackwidow to get back in the game, but this just looks absolutely destructive right now.
Exactly. I would like to highlight that currently Blackwidow is 4 on food, so even though, theoretically speaking, he's still at 108 villagers, but he simply doesn't have any food economy, so getting those man-at-arms out is extremely difficult. And you see, the Abbasids have cheap villagers here, so villagers are your best army, and honestly, it might have been a better choice to pull these villagers a little earlier, try and destroy those Springles before the man-at-arms got slaughtered.
Yeah, and this just looks really, really problematic at this point, I think, for Blackwidow. He's trying to get back into the game. A little bit difficult to see how that's going to happen. I'm trying to think if there's any way for Blackwidow to get into this, but it really looks bad. And
here is the game.
It's GG, and it's 1-0. I mean, that was a really, really tough game there for Blackwidow. I mean, in a way, MarineLorD made it look easy, but that 20-second moment in the middle of the game where all of those Springles just got destroyed really ended it very, very fast. At least for Blackwidow, he's seen the end of China, but it looked really, really good. You want to talk us through these statistics? What are your thoughts on that game?
So you see, the problem here is that 1-2 punch of Chinese. Most people are saying, okay, they have a great boom, and that's why they win the game. But you see, Blackwidow had the majority of the villagers for a long time. The thing that really describes the Chinese is flexibility. The ability to react to anything with, like, lightning speed. You could see that MarineLorD had 4 Imperial officers working for the majority of the game. This means that he can supervise the clock tower and 3 barracks at the same time. That means that he can just flood out palace guards, flood out the Springolds. So, yes, the palace guards are slightly weaker than men-at-arms, and his opponent can make the Springolds on the battlefield. But the cold hard truth is that the numbers advantage are just in the favor of the Chinese here. Another thing to talk about is that when the Abbasids are playing Siege, they're building it with their own infantry, which means that they don't have a Siege Workshop. That's pretty vital because on the Siege Workshop you have an upgrade that gives you 20% movement speed bonus to your Siege weapons, and that's a Castle Age upgrade. This means that MarineLorD, who was using the Clock Tower, could get that upgrade, whereas Blackwidow didn't have that, so that also helps with the microing, helps push up those Springolds anytime in the game. And that's the reason why you see that the villager count is pretty much even. But the fights were just much, much better for MarineLorD throughout the game. You see massive drop over here for Blackwidow, almost insignificant for MarineLorD. Those are the reasons why those fights went so well for MarineLorD out there.
And do you think, I mean, that one big fight at the 17 mark seemed to be what basically did it? Was that a lot of it down to the stronger Chinese Springolds, or it was more just micro and slight outmass being caught out of position?
I think it was a combination of multiple elements. It was close to MarineLorD's base, so MarineLorD could also reinforce that fight a little easier. Blackwidow's army was smaller at that time, and he was never really able to get a good surround on the Springolds, whereas his opponent was able to. And I also want to highlight the fact that despite the fact that we have seen the military wing being used from the Abbasid player to age up to age 3, we haven't seen the camel support upgrade coming in, and not even a single camel out. So he could have gotten 1 extra armor for his infantry, which would have been very, very helpful. But in the end, 170 kills for MarineLorD, only 50 losses. Taking fights at the appropriate time and the appropriate place is extremely important for winning games, and that's what we have seen here for MarineLorD.